Commissioner Stephanie Moore, and we are at the table. I am here with the most fierce, phenomenal attorneys this side of the Mason-Dixon. I am happy to be here in the room at the table with Attorney Dorphine Payne, Attorney Namita Sharma, and Attorney Alisa Parker. And although they are the greatest legal experts around here, they are amazing women doing phenomenal work in our community. So we want to take a little bit of time while we're at the table to talk about some of those things, particularly those things that are impacting the community during this coronavirus pandemic. So I want to start off with allowing you guys to introduce yourselves first, so the people who may not know you can get a little feel of the flavor that you bring to the table. Dorphine?
Good morning, everybody. I hope everybody is staying safe and sheltered in. My primary area of practice is in child protective service cases. I do some criminal law, and I'm also the vice chair of the Mother of Hope Board, and I'm a proud member of National Black Women's Roundtable. I'm also the vice chair and rising chair for the Kalamazoo County Indigent Defense Board. And I'm more than anything, I'm a child of God. So thank you all for being here and for giving us the opportunity to serve the community in this manner today.
Thank you, Dorphine, and welcome to the table. Namita Sharma?
Hi, everybody. I hope you're all well. I know I'm going through all my ups and downs, as is everybody else, with regard to what we're going through, but it's an up moment to be joining everybody at this moment to talk about some pertinent issues. And I practice family law here in Kalamazoo County and a few other counties surrounding Kalamazoo. That means I do parenting time, custody, divorce types of issues, rarely child support, but we're going to talk about that probably at some point this morning, because people usually do that on their own, but I do advise folks on child support issues in the Kalamazoo County courts, as well as other courts. I'm also board chair of Communities and Schools of Kalamazoo, and I'm on the board of KC Ready Fours, which is a high quality preschool organization that supports providers in the community to make sure our little ones get a good start in their lives for the purpose of education.
Phenomenal. Good morning, Alisa Parker.
Good morning. Hi, everybody. Again, my name is Alisa Parker. My day job is I am the managing attorney for the legal services of South Central Michigan Battle Creek office. There we provide free civil legal services to low-income folks and families, and we do a wide range of issues from eviction to domestic relations cases to public benefits. We're even dealing with some unemployment issues right now. And so today I'll be talking a little bit more about evictions, but also just very active in my hometown in Kalamazoo. Something that all of us are a part of, that really to be a part of, is the Charles A. Pratt Bar Association. So it's a minority bar association in Kalamazoo County, serving Southwest Michigan, and just involved with plethora of other organizations throughout Kalamazoo. But I'm also a part of A&P Consulting, which is a consulting firm that helps folks who are trying to be change agents create the change they want to see. So I am a co-founder with Nicole Parker, my sister. With that, we are doing the initiative Sisters in Business with two of my sisters, Tiffany Parker and Talisha Parker. And there we just empower women of color who are in business, really looking at resources, but low barrier access, I should say, to funding opportunities. So we know right now, in addition to a lot of the legal issues that we're going to have the opportunity to talk about today, entrepreneurs, small business owners are really, really struggling right now. And so we're hoping to continue to provide resources and opportunities to see how you can change your business and pivot. That's not what we're talking about tonight, but that's just something else that I do.
That's just a sneak peek for when you and the sisters come back for our own show. We're going to take a whole hour to talk about that. So ladies, I want to talk about, just in the initial, we're going to cover a range of things today. First of all, I want to say this. I created this table because a lot of us do not get to come to the table. And I'm very proud of this table talk today because you women, you ladies are representing for some younger women and girls who can be inspired to do a lot of the things that you do. So thank you for the sacrifice and the commitment you've made to the community and being that role model for younger girls of color as well. I want to ask you, particularly both Namita and Dorphine, because you have a lot of experience working our KALAMAZOO courts, and you as well, Alisa. The state of the courts right now, since we're in this pandemic, we've been shut down, but I understand that some work has still been going on. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Although the courts are, the buildings are formally closed and the courts are closed, there are hearings that are going on, that both telephonically and Zoom hearings have resumed. We began those hearings a couple of weeks ago just to get some of the things going. We also we're hearing, we've been hearing all along, emergency removal hearings and any hearings that are emergency basis. Now we are doing permanency planning hearings and some reviews, some pre-trials, depending upon the situation. Those hearings are both telephonic and Zoom, appearing on Zoom. Now it's very, very important for the public to know that if you have a case that's going on right now, you need to ensure a couple of things. One, you need to know that they're mailing out to your home or your last known address the hearing notice that's going to occur and how it's going to occur, whether it's going to occur by telephone or on Zoom. So it's so important that you have your last known mailing address on the court's records. If you have moved or if you've changed address because you're sheltering in place someplace else other than where you were before, you need to contact the court and tell them where you are and this is where you can be located. If you can't, if you are not unable to contact the court, you can contact your attorney or your caseworker. Let them know right away because that's how you're being noticed. And caseworkers are supposed to also attempt to notice you. And hopefully your attorney will try to contact you before the hearing so that you can visit with them before going on the record.
Before we jump to Namita real quick, Dorphine, I just want to ask you a clarifying question. When you say caseworker, is that someone maybe from Child Protective Services or is that a DHS worker?
Either
or social
one.
worker?
Yeah, it's a social worker. So you know, we can talk a little bit about what you should be expecting during this shutdown as far as your case is concerned. But right now we're talking about a caseworker, whether it's a Child Protective Services investigator, ongoing worker, foster care worker.
Okay, thank you. Namita?
Well, so yes, the courts are closed. The building is closed. And what they have are the hearings that Dorphine's talked about in the abuse and neglect side. And in the family law side, we are not having hearings at the moment. The building itself is closed, but they have a skeleton staff working, opening mail, taking care of things, but not having our hearings at the moment. We are going to be commencing Zoom hearings at some point. The courts are working on that. The difficulty is that our hearings need to be recorded for appellate purposes, as do the abuse and neglect hearings. And so that's why it's more complicated to do the Zoom hearings, according to the courts, because of the number of parties involved, et cetera. So they're working out those issues with the technology that they have. And they're really just handling the emergency situations at the moment and opening mail. So the address for the court, they are taking mail. So when Dorphine talked about getting addresses changed, et cetera, in the family domestic side, the address is 1536 Gull Road, Kalamazoo, Michigan, 49048. You can send in mail with your new address. And the interesting thing about our system is sometimes the front of the court has an address, but they're not linked linked up exactly with the address that the court system might have for mailing purposes. That's in the domestic relations side. So you should, in the non-abuse and neglect side, they front of the court may have an address, and I've had clients where the court itself has a different address, and sometimes they don't each share that information for whatever reason, and so you need to make sure that the current address is with both, and those notices of any hearings that were adjourned because of the governor's order will be rescheduled, and they will be mailed out. Notices will be mailed out if there's going to be a hearing going on. The thing I also want to talk to you all about is that child support enforcement is a little bit different now because of the fact that we're not having our show cause hearings. So if people are owing support and they're behind and they were having show cause hearings, the building is closed. You can't have those hearings at the moment or meetings with the front of the court. And under Michigan law, you cannot retroactively modify support prior to a date when you have filed a motion. So those who cannot pay support at the moment because they have lost work would need to be filing motions, and they should be doing that by mail. And then when a hearing, eventually we will be back in business and we will be having hearings. The judges will have some discretion, but the law is the law. So you have to file a motion to have your child support modified. If you're unable to pay it, you should do that by mailing that in. And I know Lisa and we were talking about it briefly. There's a website that everybody can access. It's called Michigan Legal Help. And it's just michiganlegalhelp.org. You can Google it and then click on it, and there are toolkits and how-tos. So since we all have a little bit of time, you can do it on your phone, you can do it on your computer. And there are good guides and information about the current situation and a how-to. You can create a document through that and then get that printed and filed with the court. So right now, though, the suspension includes, I believe, at the moment, because nobody is going into the building, those show cause hearings are not happening for back support for those who are recipients of support waiting for their money. We're in a situation that's unprecedented, and there's not an ability to enforce that at the moment.
So it will happen eventually, though. We're just, at a stay in place moment in time, but eventually once the courts reopen or at least begin to resume more business, it will happen for the folks that are waiting.
It will happen. There will be hearings, and the courts have to go with what's been filed and what's before them as far as any motions for relief, et cetera, like a motion to suspend support or anything like that. But people should not just assume that everything is not being charged. Those cases are still being charged, meaning that the child support is still accruing and there will be arrearages, but the relief can be found if you file your motion to request some kind of relief. Eventually the courts will play catch up with all of that. They have to. They are doing their constitutional duties to the best of their abilities at the moment as courts, but it's very difficult. And I want to note also that the governor's order said that the stay in place applies, but an exception is for parenting time or custody orders. They must continue to use those absent some absolute harm that might occur. And that's a pretty high standard, but the courts have been pretty clear. They want the parenting time to continue per the existing orders, because that's what they can enforce.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's one of the main reasons that I invited the three of you here, because I want to stay there for just a few minutes since Namita really focused on friend of the court. I want to throw out a couple of things. I want you all to, each take a turn to respond to it. One is that the calls that I get are about parenting time. There are a lot of parents, and it looks like who's getting the short end of the stick right now are the fathers, who are trying to get their parenting times, and the other parent is saying, no, we're in the pandemic, not gonna let you do it. So I want you to give them some advice or instructions of what they can do. The other issue has been around child support, where I'm getting gentlemen who are calling saying, I need to pay my support right now. They're not open. I don't want no warrant. I don't want no problems. However, the way to pay it here in Kalamazoo County is that it directs you to the state of Michigan's webpage, and you are required to have your docket number or your case number in order to make that payment online. And of course, many people don't have that information. So if we can even give them some assurance that hold on to your money until we figure out how you get it paid, but we will help you get it paid. But there is a real fear that folks are afraid of arrearages, they're afraid of bench warrants and all that good stuff. And the third issue around the friend of the court, and Namita, I think you did a beautiful job of covering that, really is the action. What do I do in filing motions? I think people thought that since it's closed, you can't do anything, but I heard you say, yes, you can do it by mail, file your motions and get into that pipeline. So if any of you want to respond to any of the issues I just raised.
Well, I will just say on that there is something short of a hearing. If parents are not getting their parenting time, there's something called an ex parte motion, and that means without a hearing. Ex parte means without a hearing. So folks can file an ex parte motion by mail again and indicate that they're not getting their parenting time. The courts have a certain number of remedies once their hearings come into play. I mean, the reality is a court order must be followed. It exists, and that's what the court can enforce. Later on down the road, to exercise your rights, if you're denied parenting time and you cannot file an ex parte motion, and the courts aren't having hearings or they haven't gotten to your order, people can exercise the ability to have make-up parenting time down the road or things like that if they've been denied unfairly any parenting time. And that's up to the hearing officer, whether it's a referee or a judge, about whether or not make-up parenting time should be ordered.
Attorney Payne or Alisa? We haven't heard from you, Alisa. Jump on in there.
Well, I'll jump in. Family law is not my expertise, so I'm going to defer to the other two expert attorneys in that. But I will say, just in terms of the courts, also contacting the court is important because each court may have just a little variation of how they're doing things differently. The court's websites are a really good resource. So if you're trying to figure out, I have a case in Kalamazoo County, Google Kalamazoo County courts, get to the webpage, because they're trying really hard, the court administrators are trying really hard to make sure that the most up-to-date information to the public is out there and how you can access the court. I know in Calhoun County, there are ways that some clerk's offices, depending on which court you're needing to access, and by that I mean, like, is it a circuit court or family court case, or is it a district court case? They may allow some stuff to be filed by email. So that information is starting to come online. They'll have that information online first. Then you can make a phone call. A lot of the clerk's offices are open with minimal staff, as Namita indicated. And then also the same for front of the court. So different front of the court's offices. My office actually operates in different counties. And so we have to know what different counties are doing. And so, for example, the Calhoun County front of the court has a lot of functionality with some limited staff, but they are taking that information. So like Namita said, if you are experiencing problems or you need to file a motion, you should still do that by mail, but contact the front of the court because you may be able to get some information. I think the key here is that everybody's trying to figure out what to do. This is new for everybody. And I would say that the law is the slowest thing out there. The thing that changes the slowest is the law. And partly is because of due process and things that happen. And so even as we're dealing with these new normals, there's a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes with the Supreme Court, with executive orders, with the state legislature, and with your federal legislative body in terms of trying to move different parts of the law that can be moved really quickly, while also making sure that folks' rights are protected. And so it's a real fine balancing act to figure out how to do something really differently in a time that we've all never seen before. So communicating with the court and trying to figure those things out, I think, would be your first and best option. If you just have these questions, don't shy away. ask the question, send an email, send, a mailing, send a letter. If you don't know how to file a motion, if you don't have access to the internet, write a letter, address the court, to the clerk. That's better than doing nothing, because as everything is changing, systems are trying to change also to try to meet the needs of folks. So communication is key.
Before you jump in there real quick, Dorphine, I do want to remind people specifically here in Kalamazoo that the easy way to access any court information, phone number, is you can always go to the website, which is calcounty.com, KALCOUNTY.com. If you're not that internet savvy and you want to call 211. You can dial from a cell phone, from a home landline, just 211, and ask them for the phone number, the address for any of our courts, our friend of the court, or any other agency or organization in our region, and you can get directly connected to those. Attorney Payne?
A couple of things. One is, one of the very important pieces of information that Namita put out there was the filing of motions now. You said that the court and the law does not allow a retroactive order. So if you file a motion after the COVID is over saying, I didn't have the money during the COVID crisis, the court can't issue an order retroactively. Isn't that true, Namita?
Right. So it goes by the date of filing, which is when you notify the court that you are requesting the relief. And they can't say, well, let's go back 2 months and correct that because, hey, I just feel like doing that. The judges and referees are restricted by the law. The law currently states that there's no retroactive modification of support. Retroactive means backdating the date you filed your request for relief. They can go from the date you requested your relief and sent notice appropriately. That's the other piece of this, is that when hearings come up, when Alisa mentioned due process and why the law moves so slowly, it's because people's rights are at question, including the rights of the recipients of support, the payers of support, the children who are affected. So file your motion. And then, as Alisa was saying, every court is doing their very level best to try and respond to questions, whether it's by email, by mail, whatever it may be. So remember to give them your contact information and be very specific about what you are asking. It doesn't have to be in the form of a motion per se if it's just to pay your support. It could be just a question. But if it's to request relief from a court order, you must file a motion. And if it's a request for relief from a child support order, then you have to file your motion, and the court can make the changes from that date when we get to the point where we're going to have hearings before the courts.
Right. So if you file a motion today, the court, and we don't get to court for 2 more months, the court can look back to today's date and issue any changes of orders back to today's date, but not before today's date, but at the point in time when the motion is filed. I think that's important for everyone to know. So if you're sitting at home and under some particularly strange situation and you cannot make payments now because you're out of work, it's important for you to file that motion today.
So before we leave this whole conversation around the friend of the court, let's talk a little bit about know your rights. We talked about the parenting time and everything. I did have a constituent call me and say, I went to go get my child. The other parent wouldn't let me. I called the police and the police didn't do anything. How can they best advocate for themselves in that situation?
Well, the governor's order does indicate that while there's a shelter in place, the very first order did indicate that there is a requirement that the exception is for a few different things like essential services and existing custody orders. So I think that's just a question that the police, they're not wanting to interfere oftentimes in domestic relations court order enforcement. It's not necessarily a priority. I think public safety has different views on that. But if you have your court order with you and you indicate it's your parenting time, I'll tell you that sometimes you're going to get enforcement on that. Sometimes you're not. It's hit and miss. But one thing is, back to our request that people file motions, indicate to the court that you're not getting your parenting time. Try and enforce your right to have your parenting time. If you're not getting it, the remedy is always to go back to court and say, I was denied my time. The courts are going to do their best to try and make that happen. Again, down the road, it might require that a court look at something like, we got to do some makeup parenting time because this person unfairly lost their parenting time. I'm getting calls like that from my clients. And what I've been telling everybody is that the court orders speak for themselves and they are still being enforced. And if you're not getting your time, file a motion.
Alisa, my phone is ringing off the hook. My Facebook page is jumping and my text messages are at capacity. Everyone are getting notices from apartment complexes, from private landlords that you're getting evicted now. What should they do?
So first and foremost, there's been a halt to eviction cases. So what that means is if prior to the shelter-in-place order, you had a notice that you had to go to court for eviction, and now the courts are closed, that case has been put on hold. So nothing is going to happen on that case. New filings, the court is not filing new eviction cases or taking new eviction cases at this time, which means if you're behind on rent or if you got a notice to quit because it's the end of your lease and you and your landlord are trying to part ways, that means that at this time, the court is not hearing those cases. So for all practical purposes, the district court is closed when it comes to hearing eviction cases. Now, there are some slight exceptions to that, and that's in the case of substantial harm that's going on to the premises. And so what that basically means in layman's terms is if you are causing substantial damage to the property, so you're busting holes in the walls and breaking out the windows and you are causing your neighbors and all kinds of folks in the complex problems, then yes, in that situation, not only will you probably face an emergency order for removal, but you could also face some criminal charges as well. So those are the exceptions. Or if you have people that you're allowing to come to the premises, because as a resident of rental property, you are responsible for your guests. And so if somebody is coming and it's a friend of yours or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a family member that's causing damage to the property, you can be held responsible for those actions as well. I will say a caveat is, though, if you're facing domestic violence, you should not be penalized for facing a domestic violence situation. So if you're renting property and you are in a relationship or you are facing a domestic violence situation, still call the police, still call the shelters, and still make sure that you note that, because those are some exceptions that could be raised later. But the biggest thing people are worried about is, I can't pay my rent, can I get evicted? So for right now in the state of Michigan, generally this applies across the board. And so when I say across the board, that means if you are renting in public housing or any kind of private housing, there is a moratorium, a stop to evictions until May 15th. So there's some information that will be shared. The original order went through April 20th. That has since been extended. And so there can't be any eviction filings or cases being heard or judgments being entered through May 15th. However, under the CARES Act, there's also a stop to non-payment of rent evictions that goes through July. Now, that applies to folks who are in public housing or get any kind of federal subsidized assistance, including landlords who have properties that are subsidized by FHA-backed mortgages. And so if you fall into that category, evictions for non-payment of rent are put on hold through July 25th, which means there can't be a filing of non-payment of rent during that time. Now, Just because your landlord can't file an eviction against you for not paying rent does not mean that you don't owe the rent. So I just really...
Wait. Hold it now. For the people in the back, say
Yes.
it again, say it loud.
I've been telling this to all of my clients. Just because your landlord at this moment cannot file an eviction for you not paying rent does not mean that you don't owe the rent. So if you have the ability to pay rent right now, I am strongly encouraging my clients, and I strongly encourage you, continue to pay your rent. Like, there's nothing wrong with continuing to pay bills as you can. This is really just a way to stop and halt cases from coming through the courts, in part to honor the stay in place order, but it does not absolve you of your obligation to pay. So if you owe rent and it just keeps accruing over these months, then what can happen once this moratorium lifts is your landlord can go to court and sue you for all of this past due rent. Now, during this period, in some cases, late fees won't apply. However, let's say you live in federal subsidized housing, you have not been paying rent since March, and now it's August. That late fee for August can still kick in at that point. So I'm really strongly encouraging folks to pay your rent if you're able. If you're having trouble paying rent, you should contact 211. There's been a ton of resources that have been poured into various relief funds to try to get folks caught up on rent. I know that programs such as mine, we're working with cities and counties to really, in the United Way, I should say, to really put together as many resources as possible to keep people current on their rent. If you live in public housing, so you live in a place where your rent is based on your income and you have lost your job or you've lost your source of income, you need to communicate that to your housing authority right away. For public housing people or for folks that have a Section 8 voucher, if your rent is based on your income and your income stops, that means your rent can get adjusted. And in some cases, that rent will be adjusted to zero. In some cases, it will be adjusted to whatever the minimum standard is. So that all varies by program. The key is you need to communicate, because that needs to be communicated in writing. According to HUD rules, it should be in writing within 10 days of that change. If you're over that 10 days, go and report it in writing. And then those changes can take effect. And so in conversations that we've been having with our public housing authorities, they've been trying to make those changes as quickly as possible. And they usually operate on a 30-day cycle. So if you had a job and you lost your job at the beginning of this month, then you need to report it to your public housing authority so that effective May, you won't have a rent obligation, or it will be reduced based on whatever the income is. So that still should give you relief if you are in a public housing authority. And if you get a Section 8 voucher especially, I think that's important, because your landlord will still have the ability to get those payments based upon how that voucher gets recalculated. But the key is making sure that you're communicating with your public housing authority, so if that's MISHDA or whoever, so that they can make those adjustments so that those payments can continue to be made. So the biggest key and the biggest takeaway is, if you can pay your rent, pay your rent. If you're already behind, talk with your landlord. If you have a good relationship with your landlord, I've been in conversations with a lot of landlords, attorneys who've been telling their clients, look, come up with some type of agreement with your tenants so that you can get paid. Because the solution, what we see going down the line, is not that everybody just gets evicted and put that out on the street. Like, that's not a great business model for landlords either. But there have been situations, I've already worked out some cases with people who have past due obligations, who are able to work out like a partial payment and get some payments forgiven for the rest, as long as they make these minimal rent payments. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of creative things being done right now. If you have not been paying rent, or if your landlord is threatening to put you out, or if they are saying, I'm gonna come to the house and put your stuff out on the street, that's illegal. They cannot do that. And so if that happens, you should call the police. If your locks get changed, if your water gets shut off, your utilities start getting shut off, those are illegal ways to try to remove a person from the property. You should contact the police, because those are not things that should be happening. In some cases, there may be a way to access the court to get some type of emergency relief. But again, because the district courts aren't having hearings in the same way, other courts are, just in terms of the eviction cases, my first advice would be to contact the police if your landlord is putting your stuff out on the street or shutting off utilities to prevent you from enjoying that property. But again, if you need help paying rent, contact 211. Try to negotiate some type of payment plan. If you're making minimal payments or some kind of payment, make sure you're getting your receipts. Keep those receipts. And then know that you should not be getting evicted. If you're in private housings, those cases will start after May 15th unless we get an extension. And if you're in some type of public housing or federal subsidized housing, non-payment of rent cases are on hold until after July.
So ladies, we've given, go ahead, Dorphine.
I was gonna say, that's serious enough that tenants can also contact the Attorney General's office, because I believe that Attorney General Dana Nessel issued a cease and desist order to apartment complexes and that violated that order and have been issuing evictions and trying to evict people during this emergency.
Yeah, I actually had a few people that contacted me and even sent me the letters that they had gotten from their landlords and even the text messages. And so I have been working with State Representative John Holy's office, and the Attorney General Nessel, her office responded to us and said that if that is the case and people are getting those complaints, should be made to the local sheriff's department, so that they knew that was happening and it could be addressed. I want to say you ladies have given a lot of great information. There's a lot happening. We're all trying to figure this out, but this is the time in our last few minutes together, we get to inspire the community. So I want you all to take a moment and just talk about how we can uplift ourselves and each other during this time, and what we can do to build a stronger bond with Kalamazoo residents. So Namita, we'll kick off with you.
Well, I just want to say that one thing to keep in mind is that we're all in this together. So we are each other's keepers. Try to stay away from negativity to the extent that you can. This is a negative enough situation that we're all facing. Do little things that are positive for yourself, for your children, for your families, once a day, to at least hold on to something positive and know that this is not permanent. We are going to get back to something, but hopefully something better than what was going on before, and emerge from this.
Absolutely. I'm looking for some real change. I think we have the opportunity to do that. Namita, I think you are amazing. I appreciate you spending some time here at the table with me. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere, because we're gonna close out together. Alisa Parker, what you got?
So I would say I've just been amazed by what I've seen from folks on the ground. We get a lot of everyday crazy news, but just looking at what's been going on with folks who are trying to figure out solutions, I'm just so proud of the work that's being done with people being creative. And what I would say is keep being creative, keep pushing each other. Like Namita said, we are in this together, and I'm looking forward to doing some transformational things. I'm excited about new systems that are going to be developed out of this and how we can put people first. And I'm just really proud of how folks have come together in ways that I didn't think could happen, but it is happening, and everything from creative ways to how we can provide childcare while people attend court and other things, to how we can create relief funds that don't make people go through so many barriers just to access the things that they need. I feel like that's going to emerge, is going to be permanent, and even to the courts and how the courts are coming out with creative ways to hold hearings and just to provide people relief. Those things aren't going to go anywhere afterwards. And so I'm grateful to be living in a time where I can be part of a solution that will have implications for generations to come.
Wait a minute, Lisa, you got some hardware you haven't shown us, sister girl. I know you got some bling bling. Congratulations! Now that is inspirational. I don't want to miss the opportunity to, Namita, you are a practicing attorney. You have clients, you're still accepting clients. How can people reach you?
Well, they can reach us sort of. We are not fully functional because we're not an essential business. We're dealing with client emergencies and also some payroll stuff for ourselves. And, I know that this is a time for people to be taking care of themselves. And we've been at half speed, not really kind of doing our full amount of work. We can't go to court, and so there are ongoing cases that I have. So the people can find me on the web, and we are answering our emails, but our office is sort of closed other than for dealing with client emergencies and our own office functions.
But what's your website? So when you're up and running, they can reach out to you.
So if you Google my name, Namita Sharma, you can find me very easily. The name of the firm is Bruggeman and Sharma PC.
Okay, awesome. Alisa, how can we find you, girl?
So the best way to find our services is to go to michiganlegalhelp.org. If you just put Michigan Legal Help, it's all one word. You'll be directed to the legal services office that serves you. We're actually accepting intakes online. So I would really encourage people to go to Michigan Legal Help. If you go there first, you might actually find the answer you need right away. But if you need more help, more direct help, I'm in the Battle Creek office, and so I'm not assisting folks in Kalamazoo directly with legal issues, but you'll be directed to the Legal Aid of Western Michigan's office, and you'll get all of their contact information there.
Sister Attorney Payne, my favorite girl.
Well,
take us home. Give us some inspiration and how people can reach you.
Well, first, I have my own business, Payne Law Offices, and my number is 269-388-3870. And I normally, I'm very, very busy, but this is a time, like many of you, that I've had the opportunity to shelter in place, which is giving me the opportunity to spend more time with my husband, and to and it's been good quality time. But it's also given me some time to give back a little bit from to the community. I've gotten calls from people that just need a question answered or just need some direction, and I'm privileged to be able to do that for you, and at no charge, because this is a time when we are all in it together, whether we know it or not, whether we believe it or not, whether we like it or not, and whether we're ready or not. We are in this together, and we have to do as much as we can for one another. I know that God is good, and He's good all the time, even now. So when you, especially for those mothers out there and those parents whose children have been removed, I feel your pain. I'm so sorry for that. But you have the right to see your children and have parenting time when you have the opportunity, even if it's just a Zoom parenting time, take it. Even if it hurts your heart to just see them like that, do it anyway, because they need you even now. So I think that we should all keep hanging in there together and doing the best we can for one another, because as a original baby boomer, I can tell you that seasons come and they go, and this too shall pass.
Absolutely. You ladies are phenomenal. I appreciate you taking the time. Shirley Chisholm said that if they don't prepare a seat at the table for you, show up with your own folding chair. You ladies showed up with your recliners, so I appreciate that. Thank you for taking some time. We appreciate having you at the table, and keep on keeping on.